So while we're in the cab, we want to check out, make sure our sensors are within range on our head. So all of our sensors need to be within that 0.5 to 4.5 volts as we go through each one. So whether that's real sensors or our header height sensors. So let's check out to make sure that all of our sensors are within the 0.5 to 4.5 range on this head. We want to first make sure that we have our sensors turned on. So on our Pro 700 monitor, we're going to press our back button. We're going to go to Toolbox. Under Toolbox, we're going to scroll across the bottom to our Head 2 tab. So under our Head 2 tab is where our sensors are going to be located at. We need to make sure that we have our header sensors enabled. And then I'm going to scroll down twice. And we want to make sure that our real height sensor is turned on and our real horizontal sensor is turned on. We also want to make sure that now we have header lateral tilt turned on because we also have the dual sensors on this head for header lateral tilt. So we've got those sensors turned on. At this point, we want to go back and check their voltages. To do that, I hit my back button. I go to Diagnostics. And under Diagnostics, we want to go to our settings at the bottom. Up at the top, we have our group settings, and the two we're going to be dealing with is header and header height tilt. Let's first check our real sensors. So let's press header. And then our parameter, we've got our real horizontal position and we've got our real vertical position. So let's select our real horizontal position first. Once I have that selected, I go to the bottom to my graph tab. We can see that our real horizontal voltage is at 2.3 volts. I'm going to run my reel in and out, and all the way in I'm at 3.5 volts. All the way out I'm at 0.7. So that sensor is going between 0.5 and 4.5. We're within range. And that's with the reel going all the way in and out. So let's check our reel vertical position next. So I went back to settings. My parameter is going to be reel vertical position. I hit my graph tab at the bottom, and we can see that our reel is at 2.8 volts. If I raise my reel all the way up, I go to 0.6. So we are above that 0.5 voltage. And if I raise my reel all the way down, I'm at 3.9 volts. So our reel is running within our voltage range of 0.5 to 4.5. So our reel sensors are working correctly also. Next, we want to check our lateral tilt sensors. So we're going to go back to settings at the bottom. Let's go up to our group up top, and let's do header height tilt group. My parameter, let's first check my header height left sensor. When I go to left and I go to graph, our head is currently in the air and we're reading 4.3 volts. So if I lower my head down to the ground now, I lower my head to the ground completely, and I'm at 1.6 volts. I'm going to raise my head back up, and with my head back in the air, I'm at 4.3. Another thing to note is we want to make sure when we're doing this is that our head is tipped all the way forward in the E position. So make sure you have that head rolled forward in the E position when doing this test. So our left sensor is good. We're below 4.5. If we were at 4.4, I would be getting nervous and wanting to adjust that voltage. Give us a little bit more leeway before the 4.5. So that's our left sensor. Let's go ahead and check our right sensor. So I went to settings, and we're going to do header height sensor right. Go back to our graph tab at the bottom. And we can see up in the air on the right side, we're at 4.1 volts with our head in the air. I lower the head down all the way to the ground, and we're at 1.4 volts. I raise my head back up again, and we go back up to that 1.1 to 1.2 volt range. So we're still between that 0.5 and 4.5 volts. So at this point, our head sensors are working correctly on our head between the left-hand side and the right-hand side of our head, as well as our reel sensors. So we've now function tested all of those sensors. While I'm looking at these sensors, we ran into heads before where our header height sensors are just out of range. Maybe they're right at 4.5 volts. It's a little bit tricky to get these sensors set. So let's take a moment, let's jump down, and I'm going to walk you through what you have to do in order to get the voltage set on one of these header height sensors, right or left on the head, to get those fine-tuned. So we want to walk through what we have to do if we need to make an adjustment to one of our left or right header height lateral tilt sensors on this head. So as we did our setup on this head, the sensors are reading the correct voltage. In order to adjust this sensor, we've got one on this side and one on the other side of the head. But in order to get to these bolt heads, we need to lower our head down until we're at the 2 position. So if we can see, we're at the 2 position, and when we're at that position, you can see the heads of the bolts on both sides of this plastic piece. And in order to get them loose, I usually take a small screwdriver and you can jam it in on the side of that head. And then on the other side, you're going to take a number 7 wrench. And then once you take that number 7 wrench, you can loosen those nuts on the other side. Once you loosen both of those, you can just turn the sensor just a little bit. And if you make an adapter, you can plug in and read the voltage on your multimeter. So if we were running a little high on our voltage, we'd be able to see our voltage and drop it down just a little bit, the amount we need to drop our voltage. We're going to hold back in on our head again, and we're going to tighten these in place, and that's how we're going to make our adjustment to our header height sensors on this head. So remember, we got one on the left and one on the right side. That's the easiest way to make those adjustments. So if we need to adjust our reel fore and aft or horizontal position, that sensor is out here on the left hand side. In order to make that adjustment, you're just going to take a 10 mil socket and you're going to loosen up these 2 nuts. You just need to turn your sensor to get it back in range and tighten those 2 nuts back down again. And that's all we have to do to make our adjustment to that horizontal position sensor. So now we're on the right hand side of the head. If we need to make adjustment to our reel vertical position sensor, that sensor is located over here on the right hand side. You can't see it behind these washers, but there are some slotted adjustments. You'll just loosen up these 2 nuts and then you can barely move your sensor left or right to get it within range. And so that's how you're going to make the adjustment to your reel vertical position, is by loosening these nuts, turning the sensor, tighten it back down once it's within range.